but it sounds like what we're talking about here in the toolkit is something that we've experimented with. As far as we know, it's the first city council to actually do that, and it worked. It actually worked far better than we thought it was going to. It was less on the technology side because the pieces were in place. You've got the information being covered, you've got the metadata, you've got a video stream. You really can mirror 99% of what you get in a real-world hearing online with a lot of tools that we already have built and working. But it's a tricky one, and I can share a little bit more with the group about what happened, what worked, and what didn't, if you'd like.
That sounds pretty cool. Seamus, understanding that the presenters can't always see the Hackpad, because the presenters can't see the Hackpad, could you get the URL into the...
Could you all go on mute for a moment?
Yeah, the feedback comes from people who are not using headsets. Seamus, can you get the URL for that into the Hackpad so people can go look at it?
All right, and I apologize, but I'm going to have to run, but I'm excited to watch the DC hearing and get some new ideas, and then I'll also follow up with Ben on any other very good new ideas that come out of the rest of the conversation. So thank you very much for the invitation, for all your work on this. Look forward to working with you guys in the future.
Thank you for helping us to understand the issue in your time. Thanks.
I just want to hop on the call to action, and I thank Jamie for asking. So I think what we're looking at is trying to build in a session that I'm looking to spin off of this Hangout is a system where we actually sit down and figure out what requirements are and build a roadmap and draw out the schematics for what spaceship democracy looks like. And so one piece of it is drafting tools. And so is that the DC drafting tools, or is that something else? The next piece is an open API. Is that Sunlight Foundation, or is there somewhere else that has it? The next is drafting standards. Is that something from Congress, or is that something we can get from somewhere else? Open legislation, is it Open Congress? Is it Madison? Is it Council-Matic? Is there something we completely missed? There's displaying law online and annotated format. Is that states decoded? Is there another tool out there that we don't know about? And then authentication, which is something that's really important and actually should help hopefully lead the conversation, which is a feature we'd really like to get built this hackathon, which is making sure that the law you're looking at is authenticated and is in fact the correct version of the law, so that for any of you who are developers, making sure you're working off the right Git branch and that you're not overriding other people's commits. So that's the long and short of it, and that's what I'd love people's help creating this requirement so that we know what we're going to build.
Okay. So Ben, so some of the things you said, I'll just feedback, sounded familiar and actionable to me. Like I could imagine, like I know how to, some of those things relate directly to components that we could evaluate, Council-Matic versus something else. Other ones I'd like to go back and make sure that while we're doing this session, to get value, like I want to make sure we understand what each of the words mean. So you said open legislate. Could you just repeat the list again and we'll put it in the Hackpad? I guess that would be a good start. And then the list that we had started, that we did before this, was we had a distinction between a component and a service or a capability. A component being so that I don't know if that's helpful or not, but I'm writing in the Hackpad now. If you can see it, component. I guess there's three. I'm not sure. Legislation, legislative, like drafting, or like code. There was it was public comment. There was notification, right? There was annotation there, and then there was oh, and then we have, I guess, data. If I want to put it that way, there was like the need data model or data model and schema there, and then there was a need. Like what are the like I don't know the formats and the kind of tweaky. I'm just going to say that you can use.
Interoperability standards.
Sure. At the high level, but you could almost, that is quite blurry there, I would say. And then
Dan,
what were the other words you said now? And I want to see which of these should I delete and use your words, and which ones are new words, or which ones are kind of crossed out. Can you just say your list again? I'll write it all down.
So I think you nailed it.
No, but you said things like.
I said, so the list was drafting tools,
Yep.
an open API, drafting standards, open legislation, a legislative framework for hosting the legislation that's been drafted, and then hosting of the law, and then authentication.
Hosting.
Daz, are you guys getting audio?
The legal
You're in?
publishing.
Non-duplicative. Like it's either like more detailed or stuff I didn't have, and that's an awesome list, I have to say. And I'm glad that you said it again and indulged me. And then after hosting, what was the last one? Authentication. Yeah. Okay. So that's a pretty darn good list right there. Like, so I want to just say it's Miller time in a sense. Like we're over the hump, you guys. Like that was an incredible creative moment there. Being able to cycle that a few times, and then also with Brad Lander, and then merging your hit list, almost a developer list of like this stuff I expect to see on a Scrum board, basically, with the sort of more, I don't know, kind of almost enterprise architecture components and capabilities and services, which is more the way I kind of came at it, is I've never seen such a complete statement of the face of the future. Like, what is the shape of democracy of America imminently when we're in digital age? This sounds like a CAD CAM file. Like, this is how she looks, and she's beautiful.
Is Daz able to hear the other speakers?
So now let's build.
She's naked.
Yeah, we need some clothes. We're going to send her to school, some dentistry. Let's get cracking. But seriously though, one of the things that would be kind of cool to do on this list is make it like a single list, not like first in, first out, but maybe just like start brainstorming 2 or 3 things that we know that does do that. Like for authentication, I'm absolutely nominating Dave Zvinich's authentication GitHub repo code using GPG code, and he's working with Waldo and great people on it. Like that's like, does anyone know of anything else that's like would even go there? Like that's an easy one, I think. Is that what you were thinking of, Dave's thing? Okay, cool. I'd like to just like put under it, maybe just do a few bullets while we're here. Great, thanks. And actually, come to think of it, Seamus is probably good. Okay, so I'll just put Dave's. It's Uniform Electronic Legal Materials Act project. Hosting of legislation. Okay. Well, maybe we should go from the top. So the top is, yeah, and do you mind, can we start, maybe we can normalize the list a little bit. Why not, can I put drafting tools up here with like a legislative drafting component would have tools, right?
Well, that's just 1%, so different language is the same.
Perhaps, okay, that's fair. I'd like to just throw out there the possibility that if you thought of it as a component that has tools, and a tool, like you can name a tool set, like tools that people use. It has a thing that you type and author and edit with. It has a thing that you check the schema for compliance with. It has it has tools. And those tools can exist within like a chassis that has inputs and outputs and like some sort of like design frame that you can now evaluate. It becomes really modular that way. It's like if you imagine that there's a component is a word. When I heard that word, it's like, wow, that's pretty good. So I've been using it since then. It's not the best, but I'm getting a lot of mileage out of it, basically. So if you thought of it that way, there's tools, and I'll bet you before we're done, we'll have some other decorations on it. And then you have down here, drafting standards totally is related to this component. We're talking about legislative drafting. We need standards for drafting. And I don't know, is a standard a tool? No, it's like a
I think it relates
standard.
to making sure that whatever is drafted is published using a legislative drafting standard. That's just so that a bill that, so just like anyone could go on somebody else's GitHub repo and say, I need a PHP library that does X, Y, Z, they can usually pull it and work, and as long as it's written in PHP, everyone's going to be able to work with it on the same server, as it were. So the idea is I should be able to go take somebody else's code and just like grab it and put it in.
Okay. So I put drafting standards like / methods. That's right. Well, I just repeated the words that you said.
So I guess specifically what I'm looking for is when somebody drafts the legislation, it is provided, it is outputted through a connector so that whatever the next piece is in the puzzle, which is likely going to be the hosting of that legislation, that it can be anything that uses it as long as it knows this is the way with that. So we're looking at, I think what we were talking about is a legislative, United States legislative markup language, that everyone would abide by that standard so that anyone who wants to host it can know that it will be put out in a way that can be easily hosted and interacted with.
So what would you call that? I mean, what would you call that, Seamus?
That's a full production environment. How would you?
Well, I'm hearing sort of 2 or 3 different things in there, but the one that's most prevalent that I think gets at a lot of the point that you're trying to, like, you have a particular vision of how things have to be, and one of the things that's really missing that's in the center of it is, I'm going to just say go there, I'm going to just use the word schema, so that when you have the schema, you've got a sense of what the data is and the structure of it, and you can sort of like pop it into a bunch of different places, and that would get to a lot of what you're saying, and there's quite a few other things have to be going right to get the outcomes that you said, which we can talk about, but like if I had to kind of, I feel like a schema is at the heart of that thing you're saying.
The drafting standard was meant to be a legislative schema.
Yeah, and like proper use of it, you know, in a sense, because then it's like, you know, it gets really idiosyncratic where like the clerk of the House, I guess one day is going to be making like technical calls, you know, to like agile teams about, oh, no, when we say like a like pink sunrise, we're really mean it in this sense, not the poetic sense, but in the meteorological sense, so therefore use this part of the schema. And like they'll totally be making those kinds of parliamentary calls for real one day, not long from now, actually. And then that becomes like, I would call that the other, like the words you're using are good words. Like you're talking about not the literal schema, but the standards of usage, you know. And the reason you're saying is because you live on Earth and you know how things go, and like this is how we do things. And we need an equivalent or a comparable way to do things with this new medium for doing legislation. So I think your words are good. We're just trying to think out loud of how they fit here in this new thing. So let's keep going. So you also had like open legislation and hosting of legislation, and that sort of like goes also for codified law, I guess. But there's by open, are we now getting at? Now we're getting at we want it to be not proprietary. We're getting at the legal status of it, there being open data, open and free data, like open data set. And you're also, I guess, getting at that it would exist in an expected format and like what expressed perhaps as a accessible service in some way. Or what do you get? Like, can you talk about that more?
Sure. So I
think what we're talking about is just when people go on a legislature's website, they expect to be able to see the legislation that's been proposed. So it is that environment, and so we can have the web government 1.0 version, which is we just have it there and you can look at it, which Thomas did in 1995, and it did a really great job at it in 1995. But fast forward, and it's a generation later, and so now people expect to be able to comment on it. And with the birth of Wiki, people expect to be able to mark it up and make changes. And something that Brett and Andrew brought up is the concept of hearing, which is in New York City, the way you provide feedback to the government on legislation is you show up between 9 and 5 at a preordained time with 2 weeks' notice, and then you provide written testimony in person. And part of this change that model, which it seems like DC's already done, that this was about to do, where you can do it over Hangout. But I really envision a world where, and Ben Kalos.com legislation is primed to do it, for my legislation up there. You can comment on it, and you'll be able to provide testimony, whether it's in the form of a comment, which we've already started to make comments on our legislation online as a regular comment, like you comment on a blog post. People being able to record YouTube testimony at their computer at whatever time they want, submit it online, submit their link for it, or being able to submit it in writing in any language of their choice. Make sure that it's all search engine optimized, because the biggest frustration I have is we have some of the most brilliant people on the face of the earth in New York City. No offense to my colleagues at MIT or Massachusetts, but my city is the best in the world. Best baseball teams too.
He seems to be having problems with his signal suddenly. I don't know what the issue is.
But so it's basically it is the framework and where legislation and quite a lot of it could also be there, and those same features could be there for the legal framework as well. But
okay, I think do you feel good? Like I'm going to just run down the list again. Are you in the page, by the way? Follow along if you want.
if you paste it into the chat.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And actually, probably should. So in the chat box, and for those of you online that don't know what's what, we are at. Oh, and Jamie said, good listen then, as cannot hear anyone else speaking. Oh, with no headset. Sorry. Okay, thank you, Jamie. So there's a link in the chat room there to the Hackpad. I'm going to basically knock down the list. So there's like a component, I guess you could say, or components. Make it bold also, and maybe our legislative drafting system is a component, and it has some capabilities and some services too. It's got drafting tools, and we'll talk about those. It has drafting. There'll need to be some drafting standards and methods that go with it, so that people are using the tools in a way that are getting extreme results, I guess. Maybe that one will not naturally follow and understand. It'll be able to house legislation, and there's going to be a need for a hosting environment, which I just noted that for the time being.
It's hosting or publishing.
Hosting or publishing.
I spent too much time looking at the DSCA, I think, which treats them very similarly. Sorry, the DSCA.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Which treats hosted content and publishing very similarly.
So now when we go down to there's like it's an adjacent use case or a component, but a little different for publishing law. So many same services are going to be needed on them. It's a little different though. So for the publishing the law, by that I mean it's already law, right? Then that there actually be a component for that would be different, and it would actually we didn't even include much in there, but it would.
The goal
we need to be able. Yeah.
The goal on a comprehensive system is on this open legislation platform, people take a vote. When that vote happens, it's recorded on the system. When that gets signed into law, you put that in, and the system automatically, when you put in the date that it goes into effect in 90 days from the day it's signed, it automatically publishes to the law site saying this is what the law is. And so it becomes the goal is to have a seamless process so that that law is then hosted somewhere else within the same framework.
Yeah. Okay. And so let's make sure that's in. So we don't really. I mean, public comment and notifications don't capture that. So there's three things I would put under what you said. If you decompose it, what I said, one of them is identity. So I don't really mention that, but that's essential to a lot of what we've got. There's an identity service of some kind. I don't want to even describe or define it at this point. I just want to name it and put it somewhere where the lightning doesn't strike us right now. Kind of hit me. But some account system where we know who we're notifying. If it's really important, people get one vote maybe on something. Identity comes into a lot of it. Sometimes we want anonymity. That's actually an identity thing, so that you're not capturing. So there's identity capability, probably an account system identity services there. Federated IDs, so people can log in with ID they already have is poor. It's like, oh no, you better now have your New York City ID too. That's not a great system. There's a service there. Number two, there's an I'm going to call it engagement service, right? And so the engagement isn't just you notify me when a law is happening, or that I can give you a comment on it, but we're talking about well, there's quite a few in there, isn't there? I guess that's where it gets like, we have to think that through a lot more, I guess. But I can name particular apps and say services, right? Like the idea of like voting things up and having something happen, and the idea of people being able to have the dialogue on things, the idea of people being able to build, I guess in a sense what I'm thinking here, Ben, is like there's a few companies I can think of that are good at providing platforms and interfaces where you can get an ecology of apps and services, all of which you don't necessarily have to build or know in advance. And it strikes me that a lot of the engagement you talked about for people participating in the law are probably best going to be able to be kind of a dynamic, and sort of like people are building apps and they're changing apps, and but they'll need access to the core content and the services. So we'll need to be able to they'll be able to programmatically access the notification service and be able to run queries. And then you'll need to have basically a platform, a service bus, and like a interface that people can register apps at, like with an OAuth token service or something. You basically need like you'll need like a bus where people can register apps and have access to sufficient set of services and capabilities that they can provide engagement. Maybe some of those would be publicly funded one day. Like the city might just say everybody has to be able to engage in a hearty debate about things. So you'll have a discussion forums or things. Maybe some of those things will be just provided by you guys, and maybe some of them would be like, I don't know, just whatever. Like there's a bunch of great apps there. Like there's 20 great ones by Sunlight. There's 50 great ones by OpenGov. Like 10 of them are the same. We got an app for that. And then so anyways, I guess I just will call it like participatory engagement, for the time being, perhaps. And I'll just put it here: participatory, from just notify me of something and let me. I don't know. It's broader than I just want to make a comment on something in a comments period. Anyway, and then for services, I feel like services are like they want to be separated from each of these platforms, and probably services would be available to all of them, it seems. But a major service is like notification. So a pub sub, I think, is the shorthand for it. Publish and subscribe, some note and things that have discoverable endpoints. And then we need and public comment. I almost want to say there is a service there, like at least like what is it, Council-matic kind of stuff. And don't you have something too, or Madison? Anyway, like just public comment. I just want to keep public comment there. Yeah. It stands on its own. It also relates to long settled bodies of law and requirements and regulatory. Like it's litigated. It's a nice phrase. It's not broken. And then annotations, also a great phrase. So those are services, and we're not done with services, though, are we? Like, what other services are we? Maybe we are done. Oh, identity. I'm sorry. I was just going to write. We didn't put it, but I'll just say some identity service, and I'll keep it bland right now. Okay, and then
I have one service to add, which harkens back to 2006, which is my preference, and hopefully my colleagues at Brooklyn Law School won't be angry with me, is that when a person wants to understand the law, they shouldn't have to hire a lawyer to understand the basic tenets, or the goal would be to provide opportunity for citizens or government to provide English summaries and explanations of the law in the text of the law. So, believe it or not, this comes from this. There's a deep heritage for this in Judaism, which is my faith. As you read the 5 books of Moses, there's these commentaries. There's commentaries. And so what's amazing is, as you highlight text, you could have a broader commentary, and that is a service that there's a handsome for currently, or
basically
click on a specific word when you don't understand it, or an entire section if you don't understand it, and have it explained.
Yeah, amen.
And then just, this is not part of this conversation, but we have to build it open-ended so that we know that we want it to be built in, so that if a judicial court case refers to it, we will be able to have an automated system that can highlight that and create that. I believe the trademark term would be the separatization of that.
Sure.
So now going into it, not offended by it, I would volunteer students to help you draft these plain language responses.
Yeah. So to finish it, so I added plain language. It's awesome, and you can imagine that being a business, kind of capability, even a requirement, or with funding one day, or nonprofits that utilizes the notification service. So okay, we've got 3 new ones, got a button in play that utilizes the annotation service, because it's literally an annotation the way you described it, and it is a layer upon the technical law, literally. Maybe with a different status, perhaps, and then utilizes other services too. And may utilize identity, so they can kind of like automatically kind of get things in the language that people want or the style they want. So anyhow, a schema is number 1. And something about formats, and it didn't go deep there. And then finally there's authentication. Basically, it's like we can go a lot deeper there, but I think we shouldn't. There's a lot with security and access and archiving and disaster recovery. I really don't think we need to get drawn into any of that. Not at this point. Yeah. So if that seems good, I guess all it's missing is just a sense of an API, but I feel like API is almost implied through almost all the services API. You need to say like open, published,
Every single feature needs to have an API on the back end. And just because I feel like a kid in the candy store, something that's often missing that would be really helpful in terms of making the law more useful is when you're looking at the law, it has that annotation. Right now, what you see is this law was changed in this year without any more definition. It would be great if when you clicked on it, you could actually see the legislation that changed it. And then when you're looking at that legislation, you're able to actually see the legislative history, because this might be something that is a centralized single system at the end of the day, a single democracy platform. You'd be able to click on it, and people who are adding the plain language law, from law students or members of the public, be able to click on it and be like, oh, that's so in the bill, in the drafter's bill, and that would actually help limit certain liability and also provide some framework for the judges who would have to interpret the laws to be able to click on it and be like, oh, that's what the drafters actually meant. And of course, because of the nature of our democracy, the judges could disregard it if they could chose.
Guys, let me make a suggestion about APIs if you can hear it on this end. I don't know, can you? Can you hear stuff on this end?
Also, whoops, the other cool one said, oh, API. Components and component and
Daz.
Okay, so let's just, I don't know, if we thought that this was adequate for the time being, and this to me is like, I would call this a notional roadmap. It's actually, yeah, a roadmap can, I found out, be text. It doesn't have to be pictures. But I would like to put this into the blog page as a notional 0.1 roadmap, like brainstorm, kind of, basically. But not a bad one, actually. And then, actually, can I grab this attention for just one last second so we can close this up? And then,
do you know there's a comment that you do?
What is it?
You're not hearing any of the audio comments being made?
Are there audio comments? Who's not hearing the comments?
It's not exactly.
Audio off.
Des, can you hear me now?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no one has their volume on. Can you come again?
Yeah. Well, here's your problem.
I'm also afraid about feeding back.
Because you're and what that means is that when you're talking, no one else can talk. And if you are continually talking, no one else will ever talk. So just be aware, if anybody else was saying anything during the last 45 minutes, it will probably be on the audio recording, but you will not have heard it. That's the price of not using headsets.
And I apologize for the ramble. I'd like to thank God for anyone watching the video. Everyone else is in the room here, so so that hopefully didn't happen. But
okay, well, I'll excuse myself and wish you the best with it, and let's see if you write something, I'll try and give you feedback.
Thanks. Yeah. So Jamie, I guess I was going to. Yeah, that's too bad. So we missed him there. That's bad. So but that's basically. So I was going to say, like, I think we should put this out as basically our first draft, right? You know, more or less, and then we can start hacking on.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense for me.
Okay. So where I was going with this is Andy Perlman has a cool idea. I don't think you've heard it yet, but he wants to work on it, and I think it would be worth our evaluating if it would be constructive or not here. What he thought is, I'll say it quickly, and then if you think it's constructive, we might.
It's cool. I like that.
Yeah, there is food. It's do you know where it is? Probably Cosi.
Okay, I know where it is.
Yeah.
I'll run and grab something. Does anybody need anything? I'm gonna go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so I hereby officially. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's close the session. All right, so we're closing the session out, and I'm going to suggest that we maybe talk to Andy Perlman. Okay. So keep packing. Are the people that are on the Hackpad, would you like the session to? Would you like us to keep the volume on or not? Whoever's on the Hackpad.
I don't think we need the volume. I think some folks are just sketching out some additional ideas.
Okay, cool. Oh, here we go. Need bulk download or other resource to. Here. Oh, hearings. Duh. We forgot that gap that Brad filled, and that. I don't know if it would ripen into something else, but that almost strikes me as a kind of a service. It's basically it's an online meeting, you know, that has a bunch of stuff. Hearings, hearings service. There. We are. Did you want to say something? Okay, good. So we are going to start, and we may pick it up in Andy Perlman's session about crowdsourcing plain language and effective legal language. He has some ideas about how he would do that actually may inform what sort of capabilities would we want. It might crisp up what we might build here, potentially. I'm not sure. Thank you.